Right then, welcome back. In today's video, we're diving into something that sent shockwaves right through the MotoGP world. Marc Marquez has just taken a massive tumble at the French GP, and it turns out his condition is far worse than anyone let on. But it's not just about the crash itself. There's a huge secret he'd been keeping from everyone about his shoulder, and it's only just come out. We're going to break down the full picture, how the crash happened, what injuries he's dealing with, why he'd quietly booked himself in for surgery already, and most importantly, whether he's still got any realistic shot at the World Championship this year. Stick around until the end, because the most jaw-dropping bit comes right in the middle of the video. Right, let's start from the beginning. Saturday, the 9th of May, 2026, sprint race at the Circuit de la Sarthe, Le Mans, France. Marquez is sitting in 7th, still fighting, still in the hunt. But on the penultimate lap, coming into the raccordement corner, his Ducati suddenly loses the plot entirely. And this wasn't your ordinary get-off, this was a Highside. For those who aren't quite sure what a Highside is, here's the picture. The rear tire loses grip, then suddenly finds it again in a split second, and the effect is that the rider gets launched upwards rather than sliding off to the side. You go flying through the air first, then you hit the tarmac. It's one of the most dangerous types of crash in MotoGP full stop, and Marquez copped it at serious speed, mid-race. Marquez was immediately withdrawn from the rest of the weekend after being declared unfit. X-rays revealed a fracture in his right foot. Not a bruise, not a knock, a fracture. Confirmed. The upshot. He flew back to Madrid that very evening with surgery scheduled for the following morning, and he's already been ruled out of his home race in Barcelona the weekend after. Just think about that for a moment. Missing a race in front of your own fans. That stings on a whole different level. Now let's talk about what this actually means for the standings, because that's where the real gut punch lies. Even before the Le Mans crash, Marquez was already 51 points adrift of championship leader Marco Bezzecchi. 51 points. That's no small hill to climb. In MotoGP, a race win gives you 25 points maximum. So you'd need to haul back 2 dominant victories just to close 50 points, and that's only if Bezzecchi scores absolutely nothing, which, frankly, isn't going to happen. With this latest setback, Marquez's chances of defending his world title would require something close to a miracle. He's now missing at least 2 races, French GP and Barcelona gone. That's potentially 50 more points handed to the field. Stack that on top of the existing gap and the maths becomes very uncomfortable indeed. That said, and it does need saying, this is Marc Marquez, a man who has raced with a shoulder hanging on by a thread, a man who has come back from conditions that had other doctors shaking their heads in disbelief, so don't go writing him off just yet. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because what's got everyone talking isn't just the broken foot. It's what Marquez finally admitted after the crash, something he'd clearly been sitting on for quite some time. He had already scheduled surgery on his right shoulder, and this had been arranged before the Le Mans accident even took place, planned for after the Barcelona race. "I already had an operation scheduled for after Catalonia, on my right shoulder," he told DAZN after the race. "That was one of the reasons I was taking it easy. I knew I could fall at any moment." That directly contradicts everything he'd been saying publicly for months. Fit and firing, no problems, all good. But now it's out in the open. Since Jerez, something has been seriously wrong with his shoulder. "After Jerez, I realized something wasn't right," he admitted. "We went to see the doctors, and they found that everything was fine structurally, but that the infamous broken screw in my lateral ligament was in a different position." So here's the full story. Marquez has a long history of shoulder surgery. One of the screws from an old procedure had shifted out of place, and in its new position, it was pressing directly against the radial nerve in his arm. It was a very strange sensation because at home I felt fine, but when I came here, it impeded my riding because it was touching the radial nerve. That's what causes me to make mistakes, be inconsistent, and have unexpected crashes. That's why I was so calm about it, he explained. And there it is. That's the explanation for everyone who's been scratching their heads wondering why Marquez hasn't looked quite like himself this season. The inconsistency, the odd crashes, the performances that felt slightly off. It wasn't that he'd forgotten how to ride. There was a rogue screw pressing on a nerve every time he pushed hard on the track. As for the procedure itself, Marquez was fairly relaxed about it. The shoulder operation is simply a matter of opening it up and removing that screw. It shouldn't take long. because he's now stood down from Barcelona as well. The shoulder surgery that had been penciled in after Catalonia has been brought forward and will now be carried out on the same day as the foot operation this coming Monday. 2 operations, one day, foot and shoulder done together. The silver lining here, and there is one, is that neither procedure is particularly complex. A fractured foot and a screw removal aren't headline surgeries. If everything goes smoothly, Marquez could be back on his feet faster than the worst-case predictions suggest. But even so, this is hardly the ideal situation for a rider chasing a championship. Every day off the bike is another day of points potentially slipping away. So the big question now, once he's recovered, what version of Marquez do we get back? If the shoulder surgery goes to plan and that screw comes out cleanly, the theory is that Marquez should be able to return to something much closer to his best. Because the issue was never his ability or his fitness in the traditional sense. It was a foreign object interfering with his nervous system and disrupting the signals between his brain and his hands on the bars. Take that away, and suddenly you've got a Marquez who can feel the bike properly again, who can trust his inputs, who isn't second-guessing every corner entry because his arm is sending him strange signals. The Marquez who comes back after this break could genuinely be stronger than the one who crashed at Le Mans. The problem, of course, remains the points gap. With a 51-point deficit before the crash and 2 races missed on top of that, the shortfall could balloon to well over 100 points. In modern MotoGP, that's a near impossible mountain to climb unless something dramatic happens to Bezzecchi. But the season is long. There are plenty of races still to come, and in MotoGP, a single moment of drama can rewrite everything. One question that's doing the rounds in the MotoGP community is simply this. Why did Marquez keep the shoulder situation under wraps for so long? There are a few plausible reasons. First, psychology. If your rivals know you're hurting, they come at you harder and with less hesitation. Second, team dynamics, because medical information is a sensitive matter in the paddock. And third, the most likely reason of all, this is just who Marc Marquez is. His entire career has been built on pushing himself well beyond the limits of what most human beings would consider acceptable. He has returned to action on the same day as a heavy crash. He has raced on a shoulder that by any sensible medical opinion should have been on the operating table weeks earlier. Keeping an injury quiet isn't a decision for Marquez, it's simply his default setting. Is it always the right call? Probably not, especially in terms of long-term health. But it is precisely what makes him the rider he is, and why people who've been watching MotoGP for years still stop whatever they're doing when his name comes up in the timing screens. So that's where we stand with Marc Marquez right now. Broken foot, a shoulder secret that's finally been aired, at least 2 races on the sideline, and a points gap that looks very steep indeed. But on the flip side, the surgeries are fairly straightforward, the season is far from finished, and this is a man who has made a habit of proving people wrong. Which brings us to the question for you lot watching. Do you think Marquez can still make something happen in the second half of this season once he's back? Or is 2026 effectively done and dusted for him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to know what you think. And if the responses are good enough, it might just become the basis for the next video.